All right, guys, it's Tommy. We're getting ready to get started here in a couple minutes. 6:59. We'll be probably getting started about 2 after the hour. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome. My name is Tommy. I'm absolutely thrilled that you've tuned into this Student Loan Destroyer Masterclass here tonight, how to confidently craft your student loan exiting strategy. So let's go ahead and jump on in. So a little housekeeping here. Guys, personal finance is just that. It's personal. Obviously, I don't know anything about your personal finances, your student loans, or your ambitions. So if you have any questions about how any of this applies to you here tonight, do yourself a favor, reach out to me, get some time on my calendar, and let's talk it out. Okay. So I love quotes. I'm a quotes junkie. I love starting everything with a quote. So today's quote comes from Audrey Hepburn, and it's "Nothing is impossible." The word itself says "impossible." All too often I see borrowers delaying major life decisions such as getting married, starting a family, even purchasing that first house. So I want you to know that nothing's impossible. If it's important to you, there's always an approach to make it work out. It might mean that we might have to make some changes to our financial plans, maybe even adjust our timelines, or even ask help from the right people. But with a little bit of planning and some patience, what you want most out of life is possible. So, a little bit about me. Like I said, my name is Tommy. I specialize in financial planning for early career professionals, college bound families. I have a deep level of expertise around how to cut the cost of college and how to get rid of those student debt. With that being said, I view college and student debt as the biggest risk to living our greatest life, whatever that looks like to you. And as such, we should really be incorporating these student loans into our overall financial strategy, which is really what this webinar is all about here tonight. So here are some places that you can find my team. We're on WTNH, Fox News. Many of you might have seen us at Yale University, School of Medicine, Yale Law School. We go to Yale School of Forestry. And we teach topics there like personal finance, insurance, and investing. So I want to start with my promise to you. And that's if you give me your next 60 minutes or so, if you stay focused, you turn off all the distractions in the background. That means no Netflix, no Facebook, Instagram, or email, or anything that's really just going to take away your attention. If you tune that all out and turn it all off, I promise you're going to walk away feeling excited about creating your student loan strategy. You're going to be inspired to dive in your finances and really driven to take action. I've heard people say that and confirm that with me. So that's my promise here to you. And also because, I want to say, I'm just really thrilled you're here because, I believe that in order to build wealth in today's world, you really need to get out from underneath these student loans as fast as you can. If you drag out these loans for decades, you'll likely never build the kind of momentum that you need to create wealth for yourself and enable you to live your greatest life, and even have a comfortable retirement. So I'm going to show you exactly how to do that here as we kind of dive in. So hang tight. So right now, right this minute, I want you to know that you're in the right place if you can relate to any of these scenarios. You've been paying back your student loans for months or years, but you really haven't made any significant progress in your student loan balance. If you can relate, you, my friend, are here in the right place at the right time. Or what about this one? Despite making on-time monthly payments, your balance is actually going up. How does that happen? I'm going to explain how that happens here tonight. And just know it's not just happening to you. Or maybe this one's all about you. You've read about ways on how to earn forgiveness and you plan on getting some of that. That sounds great and all, but it's actually a little bit harder than you think. Data from the US Department of Education showed that from January to March of this year, the first quarter of 2020, 91% of applicants for public service loan forgiveness were rejected. That's 91%. Now, we're not going to talk about just how to earn forgiveness the right way here tonight. I'm also going to show you how to maximize it. Sounds cool, right? And you're in the right place if you're still enrolled in school and you just want to get a head start with your money and your life. Listen, if that's you, I'm applauding you right now. All right, because I've met a few of you and you've really got good head on your shoulders. That's really awesome. Now, I want you to get to financial independence as quickly and easily as possible while still enjoying your life today. Now, if you stick with me to the end, I'm going to share with you how you can get me to take a look at your student loans and answer all your questions. Now, my goal is to make creating this student loan strategy as simple as it can be and only as complicated as it must be. So stick around. So let's take a look at why student loan borrowers fail. This is, in my opinion, these are the top three that I see over and over again. So I want to share them with you before I get into the nitty gritty of what it takes to really create a student loan plan the right way, because these are the top three reasons I see why student loan borrowers fail with their plan. So the number one reason why most borrowers fail is that they don't take their student debt seriously enough. Now, if you have private student loans, I know that's going to be a different story. Private lenders don't mess around and they threaten to default your loans, take you to court, and then take your money. So you really have no choice but to take private student loans seriously. But federal student loans work very differently and can give you a false sense of security. They come with ultra low monthly payments and the promise of forgiveness. And that can really cause people to take a lax stance with their student loans and stretch out those payments out into retirement and beyond, or just hope that they'll go away one day. So, data from the US Department of Education shows that borrowers ages 50 to 61, people with retirement just in their backyard, still owe $171 billion collectively in federal student loans. Now, that's $21 billion more than the year prior. So, what that shows me is it shows me how the rising cost of college is causing more and more people to enter into the retirement with larger and larger student loan balances. And if you can't make your payments in retirement, government's going to garnish your social security payments and stuff like that. Now, I know a lot of you on this call tonight are residents and soon to be doctors. I know that you're not really worried about defaulting on your student loans. But I do want to say that, making mistakes around your student loans can cost you to pay almost double of what your student loan balance is today if you do get it wrong. Second reason why most borrowers fail is that they just don't have the right data to make informed decisions. Now, I hate to say it, but loan servicing companies out there like Navient and Great Lakes and Nelnet, they only provide borrowers with very basic information like balances, payment history, because providing people with too much information will only create phone calls, which they don't want. And I'll explain why here tonight, but just know that loan servicers are businesses. Student loans is a $1 trillion a year business. It's crazy. So as such, these businesses use metrics like average call time and calls per hour. The reps that you speak to want to get you off the phone as fast as possible because, well, their bonuses depend on it. Any questions about income driven repayment plans like income based repayment, pay as you earn, revised pay as you earn, or income contingent repayment will have to cause that rep to pull tax returns. And they don't want to do that. That's like an hour-long conversation. They'd much rather put you into forbearance and leave it at that. And that will only cause you to stay in your loans even longer, which is exactly what these companies want. So the third reason that I see why most borrowers fail is they just don't consult a professional, or more likely they just don't know who to ask. And I get it. There are very few financial advisors in the country that understand how the college and student loan systems work. That's why I've built my practice to serve early career professionals like you to help you get out from underneath these student loans, teach you how to be smarter with your money, and when the time is right, help you to send your kids to college and have them avoid that massive debt. So please, if you have any questions, like I said, reach out to me. Let's schedule a meeting. We can talk it out. So before we dive into our crash course with student loans, I want to share with you a case study about some of the positive benefits of having a strategy around your student loans over simply just setting automatic payments and just forgetting all about it. Now, if you take what you've learned here today and apply it to your life, your student loan story could be vastly different than if you didn't. So today we're going to take a look at Anne. Anne is one of my clients. She's a pediatrician, works for a 501c3 not-for-profit medical center. She's single, but in a relationship. She's 30 years old, and she let it slip that there's a likelihood of a wedding at the end of the year. Now, obviously, Anne's not her real name. Okay. I should just tell you that right there. I changed that for privacy purposes, but Anne is a real person, and these are her actual student loans that we're going to go over here tonight. Her financial concern, her biggest financial concern was, am I on track to earn forgiveness through public service loan forgiveness? She wants to know if she's doing it right. Is she on track? And also through talking, she also let it slip that she's concerned. And she said, I think my boyfriend's going to propose to me at the end of this year. What would happen to my student loans if I got married? So we'll go over that here too. So I downloaded her student loan file from the Department of Education, which houses a database of all federal loans that you've ever received. This is very different than the data that your loan servicer gives to you. And I'll explain to you how to kind of get that file for yourself here in a little bit. Just realize though that file it's a text-based file. It's raw data. It doesn't look pretty at all like this. I actually have specialized software to kind of parse that data into something like this. But let's take a look at her student loans. So I could see here that Anne has taken out 21 federal student loans here in total. Doesn't mean that she has 21 right now. She could have consolidated, which we can kind of see here. She's done some of that. We could see that her principal balance is $259,081, right? That's how much she's taken out. We can see that she's accumulating $1,217 in interest here, and her scheduled monthly repayment is $1,383. Okay, that's her scheduled monthly repayment. And here I could see the breakdown of those student loans. I could see of that 259, 221 and a half is in this direct consolidation loan, which is unsubsidized. We could see her original balance here of 184,880 and how it ballooned up to 221,434. Um, so I could also see that she's on the revised pay as you earn plan, which a lot of you doctors do need to be very careful about this repayment plan. And I could see that her anniversary date for her income driven repayment plan is July of each year. So probably around May, April, May, her loan servicer will probably reach out to her to go ahead and recertify her income. Otherwise, this will be a much higher monthly payment. You know, while it will stay on the revised page earn plan, she'll be paying the standard repayment plan schedule, which could be double or triple what she's paying right now. So that could be a shock. Also, I could see that she has a small portion of that 259 in a direct subsidized consolidation loan. So these are the really good ones where the government pays the interest on it while you're in school and periods of deferment. Also, with the revised pay as you earn plan, it comes with a built-in subsidy within the plan. So it's really nice to have those two combinations, especially for doctors. It makes it a little bit better sometimes than pay as you earn or income driven repayment. So you kind of need to kind of check the numbers though before you do it. And then also I could see here that she has 18 months being credited towards public service loan forgiveness, which was very different than what she thought she had. She thought she had more around 50 months. So she was very surprised to see that she only had 18, which is really a year and a half, right? What she now needs to do is get in touch with her loan servicer. Her loan servicer will go through the payment history and see what qualifies and what does not. And if you're a doctor, this could be very problematic because you have what's termed administrative time and patient time. So when you look at your pay stubs, you actually reflect a 0.75 FTE or full time equivalency a lot of times because that administrative time doesn't count. And that could be a problem because if these loan servicers don't see an FTE of 1.0, they have to take the strictest stance and say, okay, well, 1.0 is full time, they're 0.75, so they're not full time. And I've seen that happen quite a bit. So the thing to take away here is it's very important to fill out those public service loan forgiveness employee certification forms, which I'll go over here in just a minute, to your HR department every year so that your employer can let your loan servicer know that yes, you did in fact work full time according to your employer. And then the blunt of burden is on the employer to prove, so the loan servicer doesn't even care. All right, moving on. We could also see an amortization table here. This is a projection of her monthly payments. So I set up here her scheduled monthly repayment was $1,383. She's actually paying $1,339. So that's pretty nice there. Now, I could tell here that the difference in the two probably means that she probably submitted her pay stubs as a verification of her employment. Sometimes when you do that, you end up paying more than you actually should. So the projected monthly payment here shows $1,339. That's what she should be paying, but she's actually paying $1,383. So she's paying $44 a month more towards repayment than she really needs to. If she only submitted her tax returns, she'd probably be getting around the 1339. Now, when I had her submit her tax returns to her loan servicer to kind of update these payments, her monthly payment came to 1338, which was $1 off from my estimate, right? So that saved her about $540 a year. So the key thing to take away here is that loan servicers are, well, I don't want to say wrong, but they're not accurate a lot of times, or more accurately, they probably don't really care if you're right or wrong. If you submit them the pay stub, they're not going to tell you, or if you submit them, the pay stub, they're not going to tell you you're paying more. And if you submitted your tax return, they don't really care. So let's take a look at the outstanding principal here. We can see that this doesn't really change year after year, despite making these monthly payments here. Her balance starts at 259,081 and stays that way, right, for the entire term. So what I could tell here is that her monthly payment of the 1339, what's supposed to be, doesn't actually cover the minimum interest due. And because of that, she experiences what's called negative amortization. That's where, despite making on time monthly payments, your balance is going up year after year. And this happens pretty frequently on Revised Pay As You Earn, which is a great way to kind of maximize your loan forgiveness, right? If you're a doctor or in public service. And then within 9 years, we could see that she would be discharging 264,351 here. So she's on a Revised Pay As You Earn plan, and she's using her pay stub as her verification. We're going to discharge $264,000. So the question really lies: can we do better, right? And we have to address her questions as well too. This discharge of the 264 is 100% tax-free, so you don't owe any taxes on this forgiveness, which is also one of the best things about public service loan forgiveness. But what we do know is that life does happen, right? So we need to consider Anne's second concern here. What happens if we invite Uncle Sam to the wedding? How will that affect her ability to earn forgiveness? Because Anne's boyfriend was making a very decent living for himself, and that scared her pretty badly. So let's take a look at this as if Anne never reached out to me. Let's say her boyfriend proposed to her in the fall, and the both of them got buried between work, and planning a wedding. So what would have happened? Well, they would have had a beautiful wedding, I'm sure, and possibly even a nice honeymoon to come back to a busy work schedule. She's a pediatrician, so she's in appointments all the time. And then they would have filed taxes together in April. Now, her monthly payment would have been more than double. It would have went from 1389 or 1339, what I got her, to 2956. We could also see her here that her balance starts to accelerate to the point that she's only discharging $32,954. So that's a huge difference, right? And that's an absolute waste of money. Now, in reality, she probably would have freaked out that first year, right? She would have filed her taxes, and she would have probably done a number of things to try to fix it. 2956 is probably not really affordable to her every month, right? But honestly, I don't know if she would have found a solution to do this. Not through trial and error. So instead of paying $182,000 for her education, she would have now paid almost full price for her education, $284,000, despite successfully earning public service loan forgiveness. So the one thing that I kind of want to impress upon you here is that student loans are not a set it, forget it component of your financial life. You should be evaluating it every year. The net cost of mistakes made around student loans can cost you tens of thousands of dollars, or in Anne's case here, $100,000. The bigger your loans, the more those mistakes cost. So I want you to think about how this relates to your life. Now, most of you are going to be going through huge milestones in your life, and a lot of them will affect your student loans. So I've been advising on student loans for several years, and what I found is that there are minimal resources out there to help you manage your student debt. Sure, there are a lot of bloggers out there that use enticing words like tricks and secrets, but they're usually bad advice. Personal finance, guys, is just that. It's personal, like I said at the beginning of this webinar, and the net cost of these mistakes is huge. So I think of student loans as unique as fingerprints. Each of our loans has very different characteristics in them. It's all in those student loan files that I talked about earlier. And those characteristics are inherent to the borrower. And if there's a cosigner, that cosigner. And that's what makes them unique. So when I'm reviewing a student loan case, there is no cutting corners. There's no magic silver bullet approach that's going to work for everyone. That's why a lot of times these blog posts really are bad ideas. Now, if you want to get from underneath your student loans, you need a strategy, right? You need a game plan. In order for you to do that, you need to know how student loans work, and you need to know what your rights are, what's your responsibility, and what your options are. That way you can evaluate them. So, what I want to do today is I want to provide you a crash course in student loans, right? You'll find it immensely helpful. It's nice. We're going to talk about the different types of student loans. We're going to talk about your student loan status, which is huge because student loan status actually affects your rights, responsibilities, and options. We're going to highlight some of the key big players in student loan field. I'm going to talk about how interest works, the various different repayment plan programs. We're going to talk about student loan management programs, loan forgiveness programs. I'm not going to talk a lot about default prevention and resolution, but I will highlight something from it. So in personal finance, guys, there's, and probably with your student loans, how you can tell if you're winning or losing the game is by tracking your net worth. So this is a net worth report that we provide to clients because when you have a lot of student debt, it's really hard to determine if you're making meaningful progress. It's like, what are you using as a benchmark? Your student loan balance. And life isn't perfect. You're going to have ups and downs every month, just like everyone else, but you have to have the ability to kind of look back and say to yourself or ask yourself, what the heck happened last month? You know, and then you could say, oh, that's right. I got a raise, so I needed to invest in a new wardrobe. You can feel good about that because that's a positive thing. So your net worth can be found by subtracting all your liabilities from all your assets. That's everything that you own minus everything that you owe. Now, your financial plan shouldn't just be like an offensive strategy. It shouldn't just be about paying off student loans. Honestly, I don't even know if that's the best strategy for most people, especially if you're trying to earn forgiveness. Your strategy should account for building up your emergency fund, your annual vacation and travel fund, as well as possibly a short-term money market account and long-term investment accounts, which I call opportunity funds. The goal is to find, at least I believe, to find a balance between saving and paying down debt, right? You don't want to just work on debt and not save because you don't feel ready. You need to find a balance there. And as you do so, what you're going to find is that when you come out of this red territory, this negative net worth territory, it's not because that you paid off all your debt. It's because you've accumulated some wealth at the same time. All right. So enough about financial planning. Let's get into student loans because as we know, interest is coming. And just like all roads lead to home, all loans will eventually lead into repayment. You can't be in deferment forever. So how do we go about that? How do we identify and create that most ideal outcome for ourselves? So there are two general categories of student loans, right? You have your federal student loans and you have your private student loans. Now, with private student loans, I'm not a big fan. Sorry to say. They tend to be more risky and more expensive. Their terms are always based on credit worthiness of the borrowers. And many people, when they get their student loans, haven't had a high credit scores. They haven't had that long history of borrowing and repaying back. And a lot of times, interest rates on private student loans are variable. They change over time and reset on a schedule. So I believe that we're just getting out of a period of time where interest rates have been really at an all-time low. I see them going up. And now that they're going to be going up, so are these variable interest rate private student loans. So I'd encourage you to kind of understand whether your loans are fixed or variable. If you have variable loans, they can get more expensive over time. Private student loans also tend to lack borrower protections, although they're getting better. They also lack flexibility that come with federal student loans. Private student loans also, as it stands today, don't come with the ability to earn forgiveness. So you're going to have to keep making your payments until they're paid off. Also, with private student loans, they only ever come with one or two different kind of repayment options, usually based on the balance of your loan. So a little quirk about private student loans that you should know. Many private student loan lenders require, or at least they strongly encourage student borrowers to obtain a cosigner. You don't have a good enough credit history or long enough credit history. So adding a cosigner can substantially lower your rates. What it ends up doing is it diversifies that risk for the lender. So cosigners, they're just as liable as you, and they could be possibly a liability to you. So that's something to consider as well. So what I try to do with our clients is try to get those cosigners off these loans as fast as possible. A lot of you might already know this. There is a provision in some of these private student loans that's called a cosigner release. And you're going to want to exercise your right. With some companies, the release of the cosigner happens automatically. With others, it's not going to happen unless you ask. But there's also something else. Many private student loan contracts have this little tiny clause hidden away in the obscure depths of the fine print. It's called the death and bankruptcy clause, which says that if the cosigner or the borrower dies or declares bankruptcy, or even if you fail to make a payment within 30 days after the due date, they could accelerate that loan balance and to the point where that whole balance is due immediately. They can deem that as a violation of your agreement, and as such, you're not in default, but you need to pay that balance in full, or it will go into default. So I've seen this happen a couple times, and a situation kind of goes like this. You're scraping by at work. You got your job. You're busy. You work nights, weekends. You're hustling, right? Your dad, who's your cosigner, starts experiencing a pain in his leg, ends up going to the hospital just to get it checked out, and he never comes home. Now, next week, you have to attend a funeral. You have some really teary freaking moments. You have family and friends sharing precious and heartfelt memories. And then a month goes by and you get a letter in the mail saying that your dad's death violated your agreement, and now your balance is due in full. This has happened to someone close to me. So it's just nice to know it's there. And then you end up getting a letter like this. This is an actual letter from one of my clients. And you'll get one of these for each individual loan that you have. So if your student loan portfolio, your private student loans consist of, $5,000, $10,000 notes, then you'll get 5 of these letters. So what ended up happening in this situation with this client, it was kind of messed up. The client graduated from college, didn't return back home with his parents, ended up getting a place on his own. The bills started going to the parents. Parents thought that he was all set, and that's how everything got defaulted. Took 5 or 6 months, I think. And then he got about 5 of these letters, and they ended up having to make an arrangement with the attorney to pay back the entire balance within 12 months. Now, thankfully, his balance was only $60,000, but still, it was $60,000, right? Their parents weren't expecting to pay $60,000 over the course of 12 months. So I'm sure that was a bit of an inconvenience. So federal student loans. Now, with federal student loans, these things work a lot differently. There's a lot of different types. These are all the different types of federal student loans out there. Most of you are going to have direct loans, which come in a couple different flavors. They come in the subsidized and the unsubsidized versions. A subsidized loan is one where the government pays the interest for you while you're in school and during certain periods of deferment, even in some repayment plans like revised pay as you earn, like I said. Now, these loans are obviously more advantageous because your loans won't grow as fast as the unsubsidized loans. We looked at Ann's unsubsidized loans. We saw it grow from 184,000 to 225 just within not that long of a time. So these are the really good ones, the subsidized direct loans. Now, the unsubsidized direct loans are the ones everyone gets. You don't need to qualify for them, but interest does accrue on these loans from day one. Next, we have the Grad Plus loans. They're only available to graduate and professional students, not undergrads. So if you are going off to something like med school, you will be getting these Grad Plus loans. You could also be offered some direct loans as well, but primarily you will have Grad Plus loans. Now, the thing about Grad Plus loans is that they have higher interest rates than the federal student loans, the direct loans. Students can borrow up to the entire cost of attendance on these Grad Plus loans. So when you combine the entire cost of attendance, you end up having larger balances, higher interest rates, the lack of subsidies. These only come in unsubsidized flavor. It really makes these Grad Plus loans really costly, particularly to students who might be enrolled in their program for several years. So they could add up to quite a significant amount, like we saw with Ann's loans. Now, the Parent Plus loans, in my opinion, are the worst type of federal student loans out there. These are taken out by the parents for the benefit of their child's education. Now, the parents are on the hook here, not the kids, no matter which way you think about it. And that can kind of be problematic because by the time a parent's last child graduates from college, that parent has a mortgage of a student loan and retirement's really just a few years away. So it's very unlikely that they're going to pay off those student loans before retirement. Then we have direct consolidation loans, which you get as a result of consolidating your federal student loans into a single type of student loan. It's not refinancing because you don't get a better rate. Rather, it uses a weighted average for the interest. So that loan balance and the interest will start to average out. Now, the benefit in doing a direct loan consolidation is you could take some old loans like federal family education loans, FFEL loans, which don't qualify for public service loan forgiveness, and you can consolidate them into a direct federal consolidation loan. Now it's a direct loan. Now it qualifies for forgiveness. So that's one of the nice advantages of that. Student loan management wise, it is so much easier to do a direct consolidation of your federal student loans, like your med school loans. And then you only have one or two loans that you have to worry about for public service loan forgiveness rather than 12 to 14 individual tranches of loan, which each have their own individual PLSF date. And that can really kind of screw up things. Next, we have Perkins loans. These are federal student loans issued by the schools. So it's a campus-based loan, but they're also federal student loans. And these usually are minimal. Like before I even sit down with a new client, these loans are usually gone by then. So the first thing that you can do to help yourself out tremendously is to go to studentaid.gov and download your student loan file. Now, like I said before, this is a database managed by the government, and it stores valuable information about your federal student loans that really can't be found anywhere. So This isn't for private student loans. If you have private student loans, it's a bit of a workaround to try and find out all your private student loans. You're better off pulling a credit report. But for your federal student loans, you'd go to studentaid.gov. And if you want me to take a look at your loans, you needed to get that file. Okay, so once you're logged in, the first thing that you need to do to help yourself here is to go to your name, and you want to scroll down to My Aid. When you go there, you'll see an option to download My Aid data. This is your student loan file. It has all the federal student loans you've ever taken out in here. So you want to go ahead and click that. Now, when you download your student loan file, it'll say this. It'll be my student data.txt file. Now, it can be problematic if you're trying to download this from your iPhone or iPad. A lot of times these text files will come up as web pages, and that does make it different. You want this text file. You don't want to screen capture or change the actual file itself, especially if you want me to look at your loans. But in here, we can see some of the data in here that my system parses, and then makes it look like this. So it's a little bit more legible for you. So which kind of loans do you have? Do you have federal student loans? Do you have private student loans? Do you have a mix? You know, how much of it's federal? How much of it's private? You know, are they direct loans? Are they Perkins loans? Because depending on your answer, your financial plan for getting rid of them is going to be vastly different. And the general rule of thumb here is do not guess. Now, next, we're going to discuss the various different statuses associated with your student loans, whether they're federal or private. Knowing your statuses will actually help you understand your rights, your responsibilities, and your options. So these are the statuses. Your student loans can either be in repayment, they could be in a grace period, they can be in deferment, a forbearance, or delinquency, or even default. Those are the statuses. Now, depending on which status that you have, your rights, responsibilities, and options will vary. I'm sure you can kind of figure that. Now, repayment, this one is self-explanatory. Your loans are due. You have to make your monthly payments according to your repayment schedule. So your rights, if you can't afford your payments, you may be able to postpone them by requesting a deferment or a forbearance. Your responsibilities, you have to make your minimum monthly payment, right? Partial payments don't count towards fulfilling this responsibility. Failure to pay the entire monthly payment and on time can kind of result in late fees, negative credit reporting, or even default. Options. So you have several different repayment plan options to choose from, particularly for your federal student loans. Some of these plans can be based on your income, even if you have a very large loan balance. For private loans, count on maybe one or two repayment options, mostly based on the balance of the loan, like I said, and not your financial circumstances. Next, we have grace period, which is a unique period right after graduation. It's a period where no payments are required. And the idea here is that lenders want to give the recent graduate some time to kind of find a job before they start sending the bill, right? That's pretty helpful. Grace periods vary depending on the type of loan that you have. Federal Stafford loans have 6 months grace periods. Federal Perkins loans have a 9-month grace period. Graduate Plus loans don't technically have a grace period, but they do have a 6-month post-graduation deferment, which functions essentially as a grace period. But you might need to formally request one from your loan servicer. Federal Parent Plus loans have no grace period since the parents are on the hook here rather than the graduate. Private student loans typically have a 6-month grace period, although certain private bar studies out there have a 9-month grace period. The important thing to keep in mind here regarding grace periods is that they can be only a one-time thing. So it's kind of like a use it or lose it. This is especially important for graduate students, law students, med school students. If you took out student loans to fund your undergraduate degree, then and then you took out student loans for law or med school, then you've used up some of your grace period for those undergraduate studies, right? Even if you went to law school immediately. So this means that your undergraduate student loans may become due much sooner than your graduate loans. So it's important to kind of reach out to your loan servicer and kind of understand how much grace period you actually do have left. So your rights while in grace period, like I said, you don't have to make payments during grace period. Just understand that interest will accrue on your loans, even though you are in grace period. That's going to grow your balance. Your responsibilities while you're in grace period is you need to know when your grace period ends, right? Like my client that defaulted his private student loans, he did not know his grace period, when it started, when it ended. He didn't even know anything about it. And then he accidentally defaulted on his student loans. So it is important. So key takeaway here, be proactive. Don't just wait for the first bill to arrive. Options. So you can voluntarily make payments if you want to cover the interest that's accruing. It's not required, but I do highly recommend it. So graduate students out there, you should probably contact your loan servicer after graduation just to determine when exactly those student loans will enter repayment, and then take that date and put it onto your calendar so that you know. Deferment. So deferment allows you to postpone your payments for a certain period of time. Deferments may be granted for a variety of different reasons, with the most common being enrolled in school at least half the time. During school, usually you don't have to make monthly payments on your student loans. Deferments can also be granted for other situations such as unemployment or economic hardship. But this is mostly true for just federal student loans. For federal student loans and deferment, interest will accrue on any unsubsidized loans, including unsubsidized Stafford loans and Graduate Plus loans. The interest, however, won't be capitalized, meaning added back to the balance. So it will kind of start to accrue in a different bucket, but it's not going to be added to your big balance and then you interest, getting capitalized on that now bigger balance. So that's kind of helpful. Your rights. While you're in deferment, you have the right not to make any payments. You have a total of 36 months of economic hardship deferment available to you throughout the entire repayment term of these loans. Your responsibility is to meet the particular requirements of your deferment, such as being maintained in school or being unemployed. You need to maintain that status to be in deferment. Now, your options while you are in deferment, again, you have the option to make voluntary payments if you want to reduce interest accrual, or even pay down your student loan balance during that deferment period. Or you can even end deferment early if your circumstances change, which could be a very smart thing to do. Like I said, you only get a certain amount of it. So if you don't need it, then you should just stop it so that you can save it for later if needed. Forbearance. So forbearance also allows you to postpone payments, but they're usually granted just in times of hardship. Like right now, what we're doing with the CARES Act, we're in an automatic forbearance period, right? So your forbearance rates will vary depending on the type of loan that you have. Most importantly, I think interest accrues during forbearance for all types of loans, except for, what we're experiencing now with the CARES Act, this emergency forbearance. So normally though, interest does accrue during forbearance for all different types of student loans, and sometimes in a way that can cause your balances to increase at an even faster rate than a deferment would. And this is because the outstanding interest can be capitalized or added back into that big balance, your principal balance out there. And then interest will start to accrue on that now larger balance. So that's in forbearance, right? Whereas the deferment doesn't do that, it doesn't capitalize it. So your rights while you're in deferment or forbearance is the same thing while you're in deferment. You don't have to make payments while you're in forbearance. Again, you get 36 months of economic hardship throughout the repayment term of your loan. Your responsibilities are you need to keep track of how much forbearance you've used, right? They're time limited, meaning you only have a finite amount of forbearance available to you. Obviously, you can't postpone your payments forever. So be mindful of that. Be mindful of where that interest accrual happens pretty rapidly in forbearance. Your options, once again, you can voluntarily make payments if you want to, just like a deferment. You can also end the forbearance period if your circumstances change. Delinquency and default, like I said, I'm not going to go into too much. If you are in delinquency and default, that's when things kind of get a little scary. That means you're falling behind on your student loan payments. I'm going to assume that none of us are in this category and just move on. But if you are in delinquency or default or at risk to get into it, this is where you kind of need legal counsel. And if you need referrals, I have them for you. All right, let's talk about the players. So with student loan players, I'm talking about the loan servicers out there, mostly Navient, Fed Loans, Nelnet, Great Lakes, all those people. All right. You also have lenders out there, guarantee agencies and collection agencies. We're only going to be focused on the loan servicer because that's who you have direct contact with. So Navient is the largest loan servicer out there. It services the most amount of student loans in the country. And while it's expected that they should have the most amount of complaints as well, they also have the highest complaints per million borrowers. So that means they have an absorbent amount of complaints compared to others. Now, I believe that Navient gets most of the complaints because, well, they have a contract with the US government to offer the lowest cost to taxpayers. So you have to assume that the quality of service is going to go down, right? Can't be expecting too much from them. At number 8 here, we have Fed Loan Servicing. Fed Loan Servicing has a unique distinction of managing the federal student loan programs, which is a very troubled program. Fed Loan has made a lot of mistakes, and they haven't provided accurate payment counts towards public service loan forgiveness. And it's pretty apparent that they're not going to be investing in their infrastructure to improve accuracy. So that's who's managing your public service loan forgiveness programs. At number 7, we have Mohila. Mohila does an okay job for private student loans, not so much for federal student loans with all those income-driven repayment options out there. Nelnet does a pretty decent job at managing forgiveness programs and handling income-driven repayment plans out there. Not much to say about Nelnet. They do a pretty good job. Cornerstone comes in at number 5. They're a smaller loan servicer that could probably manage private student loans all right. But I'd be kind of cautious about federal student loans because they might not be as in the loop with all the income-driven repayment options out there. At 4 and number 3, we have Ed Financial and Granite State. They do an okay job with smaller student debt balances, but they're not likely to cooperate with bigger loan servicers out there or more complex situations. And so not everyone has the same loan servicer for all their student loans. It's pretty rare if you do, especially if you have a number of different student loans. A lot of people might have something like Ed Financial and Fed Loan or Ed Financial and Navient. So they do okay with smaller balances. They don't really coordinate well with other loan servicers. So just be aware of that. Number 2 is OSLA, or the Oklahoma Student Loan Authority. They have the smallest amount of complaints out here, really. Nothing really to say about them. They must be doing a good job. And then at number 1, we have Great Lakes. Great Lakes is pretty big. Most people cite them as fair, even though they might have problems with them. And most of the times you'll actually get accurate answers from Great Lakes. So I do like Great Lakes quite a bit. So, guys, as a whole, the student loan industry is based on how low that you can bid, right? And these companies are incentivized by how long they can keep you on their platform, right? So they want to keep you around as long as possible. That might not mean servicing you to the point that you're happy, but um, maybe causing you to make decisions that lead you into staying into your loans even longer, such as screwing up public service loan forgiveness. Let's talk about how interest works. Now, if you're terrified and bewildered as to how much your student loan balance has grown over time, you're not alone. Many borrowers, particularly med students, law students, um, you know, people with graduate degrees, they tend to have higher student loan balances um, than when they started. Let's look at Anne's case. She had 184,000 for that one loan. It blew up to 225. It's a pretty big growth. So how is that possible? And a big part of the answer is it's interest. So there are two basic types of interest. Like I mentioned, there are fixed interests and there are variable interest rates. Now, fixed rates are interest rates that are locked in for the life of the loan. A fixed rate will provide you certainty and predictability. You know how much the interest is going to accrue over the life of the loan because it's not going to change. However, on the flip side, if you start out with a high interest rate, you're stuck with that, right? Variable interest rates change throughout the life of the loan. It might start out relatively low, maybe with an introductory price, but it could potentially balloon enormously over time. And that makes predicting the interest accrual and effectiveness of your repayment plan pretty difficult. Sorry. So in addition to the type of interest you have, there's also an important factor about interest accrual, and that's compounding, right? Compounding occurs when you have interest that's being accrued and then it's getting capitalized or added back to that principal balance, and then new interest starts to accrue on that now larger principal balance. And then interest is again subsequently capitalized, and that whole cycle continues. This is the reverse of wealth. The same thing happens with credit cards. And I do view variable interest rate products to credit cards. Okay, so let me show you an example here. You have a starting balance of 100,000. Okay, your interest rate 6.8. Maybe they're Grad Plus loans. The balance at your graduation is 113,600. Balance after the grace period goes to 117,000. You get a job, maybe you need more time. You go into forbearance for 3 extra months. Your balance is 118,700. And then you're in repayment for 25 years and you've paid $247,000 for that $100,000 loan. So that's how interest works. So next we're going to be talking about all the different repayment plans, which seems to confuse everyone, and for a good reason. One thing that you'll learn about our government is that they do not like to remove older repayment plans that just don't work anymore. If they did, the media would have a field day, citing that they were taking away benefits from the public. And I don't know a lot of politicians that would care to suffer through that. I don't. So instead, the government tends to just introduce new repayment plans, which adds to the confusion and causes people to make costly mistakes. So let's take a look at the federal student loan repayment plans out there. We have two styles of repayment plans. We have balance-based level repayment plans, such as your graduated repayment plan or your standard 10 or to 30-year repayment plans. And then we have income-driven repayment plans, which is not to be confused with income-based repayment. So income-driven repayment plans are the ICR, income contingent repayment, IBR, income based repayment. There's also a new income based repayment that we're just starting to see some people get them. We have pay as you earn or pay, and we have revised pay as you earn or repay. Those are your options. So let's talk about the balance based level repayment plans. Essentially, this is our 10-year standard repayment plan and the graduated repayment plan. Now, the standard repayment plan is the default repayment plan option for borrowers. It's very simple to understand. The standard repayment plan is designed to pay off your loans in 120 payments or over 10 years. Now, if you have direct consolidation loans, you can go ahead and stretch those out from 10 to 30. Just be mindful that this also multiplies the amount of interest that you're going to be paying over the life of that loan. Now, I consider standard repayment to be the full retail price of your education, right? That's the full MSRP price. This is what you owe plus interest divided by 10 years and spread evenly. Now, in my experience, this plan is best for those who want to pay off their student loans as fast as possible and have the income to do so. For example, lawyers in big corporate law might consider this because, one, they don't qualify for public service loan forgiveness, right? So these loans aren't just going to disappear. Two, these some of these loan balances are uncomfortably high, so it makes sense that they might want to use their big income to kind of knock these down as fast as possible. And three, to also keep the protections that are associated with federal student loans. Once you kind of refinance these into private student loans, you're stripped of all those federal benefits. So just kind of keep that in mind. So sticking to the federal student loan system for something like a big law attorney or maybe even a dentist, someone that's in a private practice, sticking to the federal student loan system could allow them to really make a shift in their career, especially for that big corporate lawyer. They might make less income, but they would also have access to income driven repayment plans. And that could enable them to slow down and start a family if they wanted to. So that's something to consider too. Balance-based graduated repayment plans, like the standard repayment plan option. This is also based on the balance of the loan and the interest, but the monthly payments change over the course of the repayment term with this plan. In the beginning of the repayment term, the payments are going to be ultra low, probably not even covering the interest due. And then they're eventually going to gradually ramp up over time to compensate for that lower initial start off. So I don't, and you should, if you're on this, I don't believe anyone should be on the graduated repayment plan. No one. You're assuming that your future income will be substantially higher than what it is today. And what I know is life happens. People change jobs, they make lateral moves in their career, or they might want to slow down to start a family. There's no guarantee that you're going to be able to make these payments in the future. And if you're on a graduated repayment plan, you could get yourself in trouble. Income-driven repayment plans are entirely different than the balance-based plans. Instead of focusing on the loan balance and the interest to achieve full payoff, income-driven repayment plans use a formula to calculate a unique monthly payment based on your financial circumstances. So the plan looks at your discretionary income, which is generally defined as your adjusted gross income over 150% of the poverty limit for your particular family size. Now, I know that's not going to make sense to a lot of you. Just know that it's based on a formula that's based on a percentage of your income. Now, if any balance remains at the conclusion of the plan's repayment term, such as 20 or 25 years, then your balance is forgiven. Although forgiveness in this manner is treated as taxable income, which could cause some borrowers to be left with some potentially big tax liabilities out there, and probably at a pretty opportune time, like when you're sending your kids to college. More on that later, but for many borrowers with larger federal student loan balances, income-driven plans are going to be the most affordable repayment plan for you. Nonetheless, each of these plans uses somewhat of a different formula. So they do have unique eligibility requirements as well, and that could make it pretty challenging for some borrowers to select an ideal plan for them. So let's go over the Income Contingent Repayment Plan, or ICR. This was the original long-term income-driven repayment plan out there for borrowers with relatively higher debt burdens relative to their income. I'm not really going to get into this plan in detail. It's old and it will typically result in a higher monthly payment. But it is important to know that it exists. But the only people that should be using this plan are Parent Plus loan borrowers that have consolidated their federal student loans, the Parent Plus loans. They would gain access to this plan, and this plan would be the only income-driven repayment option available to them. Next, we're going to discuss income-based repayment, or IBR. So as student loan balances started to soar, monthly payments on income contingent repayment started to become unaffordable. That's what led this plan to be introduced. Now, right now, income-based repayments probably one of the most widely used income-driven repayment plan options out there, or at least it used to be. And there was secretly two versions of this repayment plan, with the only way of understanding which one you have is by understanding a certain date. Now, for new borrowers on or after July 1st of 2014, income-based repayment will cap your monthly payments at 10% of your discretionary income. These borrowers will also receive forgiveness after 20 years of on-time monthly payments. Now, this new borrower status means that you can never have been disbursed federal student loans prior to July 1st, 2014. All right. And how you can tell whether when your loans were dispersed was in that student loan file that I gave you directions on how to download. You could tell the income driven payment date on there. For borrowers who were issued their first loans before July 1st of 2014, your monthly payments are going to be capped to 15% of your discretionary income, which could be pretty high, especially for pretty high student loan balance. 15% is pretty high. These borrowers will also be eligible for income-driven forgiveness after 25 years of monthly payments instead of the 20 years. So it's 5 years longer for you to earn it. So you're paying more over a longer period of time. Now, a lot of doctors also tend to forget that you actually need to demonstrate financial need to switch to income-based repayment. But if you're already on it, you're not going to get kicked off it because you no longer have a need. You will be able to stay on it. But if you are on something like Revised Pay As You Earn, which I see a lot, ends up backfiring on them when their monthly payments start to skyrocket, and their only repayment plan that they could switch to is income-based repayment, and now they no longer qualify for it because now they have attending physician pay, and their pay is now ridiculous to their student loan balances. So when their income doubles or triples, so does their monthly payments on some of these student loans. Pay As You Earn is a relatively new type of repayment plan. It was created by the Obama administration. It's a good option if it's available to you. There's because if it is, there's a good chance that you have that 15% discretionary income for income-based repayment. So you have that 15% version of income-based repayment. The downside of this plan is that it has some really strict eligibility requirements out there, to the point that I'd say most people don't even have access to this plan. And that's what created Revise Pay As You Earn. Now, Revise Pay As You Earn is a pretty unique beast. It offers really ultra low monthly payments. Many times it doesn't even cover the minimum interest due, causing negative amortization, where your balance starts to grow despite making your scheduled monthly payments. So it's a little unnerving sometimes. It's available to all borrowers with direct, Stafford, and Graduate Plus loans, regardless of when the money was borrowed. So it kind of fixes that strict date, requirement of pay as you earn that blocked most of us. This is a very desirable repayment plan that also comes with the promise of forgiveness. So when you partner something like a financial advisor like me that can kind of help you maximize forgiveness, and you have a plan that allows you to really, maximize forgiveness, you have really the best of both worlds, I feel. Now, Revised Pay As You Earn has two possible repayment periods. They have a repayment period for undergraduate loans, which is 20 years, and for graduate loans such as med school or law school, repayment term is 25 years. Now, the big downside to this plan is that borrowers view it as a way to make minimum monthly payments, because it really does give you really low monthly payments, especially if you owe a lot and you're only making 60,000. Sorry, water there. What they don't really anticipate is getting married and taxes. Under Revised Pay As You Earn, it doesn't matter how you file your taxes. Your income will always be combined with your spouse, which can be very different from other income-driven repayment plans out there. Also, ballooning your outstanding balance for 20 to 25 years because you plan on earning forgiveness requires some planning. You have a lot on the line if you're doing that. Forgiveness earned this way is also taxable. So don't be surprised if you are trying to discharge $150,000 in federal student loans and you find that you start owing $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 in taxes to the IRS. Now, another downside to this repayment plan is there is no ceiling as to how high your monthly payments can go. None. Your monthly payment can exceed the standard 10-year repayment plan, which is the only repayment plan. The Revised Pay As You Earn is the only repayment plan that can do that. So again, you're a resident, you go into fellowship, you're on the Revised Pay As You Earn, you now get your attending pay, you get married, you have your attending pay plus your spouse's pay, and you find out that you owe $4,000 a month and that there's no possibility to now earn forgiveness through public service loan forgiveness, because it will all be paid off before that 10 years. So it does take some planning. So determining your optimal repayment plan out there can be a daunting task. It is. I hear you, especially when you have a lot riding on it, like forgiveness. Now it's an emotional thing. This is what we do well in my practice. Repayment plans aren't the only thing that to think about when it comes to managing student loans. There are a number of programs out there and options available to you that can make student loan repayment easier, regardless of the specific repayment plan that you select. Now, while all these programs might not be necessary or even ideal, depending on your circumstances, they're pretty worthy to review. Some of them we already discussed. We have deferment and forbearance. We have consolidation. We have refinancing. We also have auto debt. Now, like I said, deferment and forbearance programs allow you to postpone your payments for a variety of reasons, usually due to hardship. But like we discussed, you should really try to switch to an income-driven repayment plan before you enter in deferment or forbearance. It is possible to get a really low payment or even a zero monthly payment like we are experiencing in this emergency forbearance. You can actually get a $0 monthly payment on an income-driven repayment plan sometimes. and still have those zero payments count towards public service loan forgiveness, like the special forbearance that we're in right now. Consolidation, like I said, it allows you to combine several individual loans into a bigger loan. Again, this isn't refinancing. It doesn't change your interest rate per se. It just averages out. But having one or two student loans, a subsidized, unsubsidized version with a single loan servicer is much easier to manage than 10 to 14 individual loans with multiple loan servicers that don't want to talk to each other. Just note that if you do consolidate, it does reset any forgiveness progress that you've made. You essentially have a new loan. So ideally, you want to do this as early as possible, and definitely not when you are probably getting your attending pay. You start to erode some of that potential in there. Doesn't mean that there's no planning available to you if you're an attending. It just means that you probably don't want to wipe out half of your PSLF progress. You probably have to figure out how it's going to work, to do it. And then we have refinancing, which is the process of going to private lenders and trying to secure a lower interest rate. It's not a bad strategy for a lot of people, especially if there's no chance of you earning forgiveness. There's no sense staying in public service for the promise of forgiveness when you can get even more pay doing something that you really want to do, and there's no chance of you earning forgiveness in the route that you're in right now because you make too much money. That can be a little nice. It could be kind of nice to hear that from someone like me, where you're given the green light to go do what it is you are supposed to be doing, your calling. So that's refinancing. So with refinancing, private refi can, in a lot of situations, a private refi can be the only way to lower your net cost of education. Like, for example, if you're a dentist and you have federal student loans, you work in a private practice, you have federal and private student loans, or just a lot of federal student loans, possibly refinancing it might help you control your student loans better. One, refinancing it would most likely get you a better interest rate because Grad Plus loan 6.8 is pretty expensive. Most loans I'm seeing right now are 5 and under. And two, you get to change the repayment term of the loan. Instead of having a 10-year, 15-year, you could do a 20-year if you want to, or a 30-year. All depends on you. A lot of times I do see people go to a 15 or 20, and it gives them a little bit of a breather instead of the 10-year standard repayment. And just remember that the goal isn't to simply pay down your student debt. You should be incorporating both an offensive and defensive strategy. You should be finding a way to pay down your student loans simultaneously, while you're building your emergency fund, your vacation fund, and going on debt-free vacations, because I believe those feel vastly different than ones swiped with plastic. And also having a short-term goals fund to build up for something like a down payment on a home, things that are important to you. Lastly, there's the auto debit feature. Most of you are going to enroll in auto debit automatically because it helps you save 0.5%. That's where instead of having to remember to make your payments, your payment will be drafted from your bank. And that leads us into loan forgiveness programs, guys. So with loan forgiveness, there's income-driven repayment forgiveness, right? That's something like reaching the end of the term of income-based repayment or revised pay as you earn and having those loans forgiven. You could get loans forgiven through public service loan forgiveness. There's teachers loan forgiveness. There's quite a few. So with income-driven plan-based forgiveness, this is for repayment plans such as income contingent repayment, income-based repayment, pay as you earn, revised pay as you earn. They all have forgiveness provisions built into them. This is a longer term forgiveness strategy where you make on-time monthly payments for 20, 25 years, and then any remaining balance left, which could be significant, will be forgiven. So the general rule of thumb here is if your student loan balance is higher than your annual salary, so if you owe $200,000 and you make $150,000 a year, general rule of thumb is you will probably never pay off those loans on an income-driven repayment plan. You'll most likely hit the end of the term and the remaining balance will be forgiven. In those situations, after making those payments, your loan servicer will issue a 1099-C or cancellation of debt to the IRS. And if you've had at least $600 forgiven, the amount of discharged during the tax years will be added to your income if it is taxable. And depending on your situation, this could really push you up in the tax bracket, causing you to owe even more in taxes. And if this happens at a time where, let's say, you're sending a kid to college, that could be detrimental, right? You might be paying exceptionally more for your children's college than you need to, because now you have this, huge income on your taxes. So let's talk about public service loan forgiveness and why people are messing this up. It is a little confusing, but I'll make it easy here. So to qualify for public service loan forgiveness, you need to have the right type of loan. Okay. You need to be making payments on the right kind of repayment plan. You need to make 120 qualifying payments. They don't have to be consecutive. You could take a break and come back to it later. This adds up to being about 10 years if you do it straight. It's important to note that PSLF, Public Service Loan Forgiveness, is not a 10-year program. It's a 120 qualifying payment program. Okay. And lastly, you need to work for a qualifying employer. So I would kind of look that up. Benefits of public service loan forgiveness. It's the quickest path to forgiveness, 10 years versus the 20, 25 years from income driven repayment plan forgiveness, huge, right? The forgiven amount is not taxed as income. It just goes away, huge. So teachers loan forgiveness. Okay. So if you teach full time for 5 complete and consecutive academic years in a low income school or educational service agency, and you meet some other qualifications, you may be eligible for forgiveness up to $17,500 on your Stafford loans. Now, the exact amount depends on the subjects and the grades that you actually teach. Secondary math, science and special ed teachers can get up to $17,500, while elementary school teachers and secondary school teachers who teach other subjects can get to up to $5,000 forgiven. But you need to be teaching in a related or an area related to your academic major. Obviously, this program is less generous than public service loan forgiveness. 17,000 is not 217,000, but it does offer forgiveness a little bit more quickly. And you could still go after public service loan forgiveness. Perkins loans, cancellations. Federal Perkins loans are special type of loans. They have their own provisions allowing for full or partial cancellation if you work in certain specialized professions, education, healthcare, law enforcement, military, the Peace Corps or American Corps. There's even certain positions on government where you can do that. For attorneys, public defenders, and prosecutors, they stand to benefit most from Perkins loans, I think. These attorneys can get a portion of their Perkins loans canceled each year that they remain in qualifying employment. And they can ultimately get their full Perkins loan balances forgiven without even have them making a payment on all of them, after 5 years of service. So that's pretty nice. So I have a note here. If you have or you're considering Perkins loan cancellation, I think it'd be a good idea to, if you do a direct consolidation loan, to exclude your Perkins loans from that consolidation, because you would lose those unique benefits. You wouldn't be able to get them back. All right. Next, we have some employer-based forgiveness. Certain private employers may also offer limited time loan forgiveness and repayment assistance programs. The repayment assistance programs are a little bit more common from what I see. And they might not even be limited to just federal student loans. They could apply to private student loans. So you should check with your employer to um, see if they have any kind of loan forgiveness, repayment assistance programs, and if they're available to you. Next, we have school-based loan repayment assistance programs, or LRAPs. Many students, particularly law schools, offer graduates loan repayment assistance, which is essentially loan forgiveness, but it's a little bit of a different form. These programs are typically called loan repayment assistance programs, or LRAPs. Now, most LRAPs are professional dependent, meaning that the borrowers are only eligible if they work in certain public service fields, pro bono positions, or even jobs in underserviced communities. Some of these LRAPs start off to being a way to kind of pay off your student loan bills. A lot of times it could come um, with certain rules, like they're considered to be a loan at first, and then after a certain period of service, then they are forgiven. Um, so I'm not sure why you're here today, but I bet you I can kind of guess. You've got a lot riding on your student loan strategy. Maybe you're hoping to earn forgiveness, or maybe you just don't want to pay more than you have to. You know, if that's you, I totally understand. Or maybe you showed up here because you want to see a light at the end of the tunnel. Right now, you're just not seeing that. You know, when a client leaves my office and gives me a big sigh of relief, or, even gives me a hug or a handshake, I know that they're leaving all that stress and worry at the door. It's in those moments that I'm reminded why I love what I do. It's really meaningful work. So maybe you also showed up here because your loan balance is growing and growing, and you just want to double check if everything's okay. I get it. That's why Anne came to me. I mean, she wasn't freaked out. She just wanted to know that everything was going to be okay. And I saved her from making $100,000 mistake in the process. That's a lot of money to be throwing away. So the obvious question here is, are you excited to dive in and start planning, to see a light at the end of the tunnel? So you made it to the end. I promised I'd share with you how you can get me to take a look at your student loans. And that's through having a consultation with me. Like I said, personal finance is just that, guys. It's personal. In order for us to understand how your student loans fit into the grand scheme of things and to really advise you, we need to take a look underneath the hood of your student loans and your taxes to see what's going on there. In doing so, we'll be able to import your student loan data that's directly from the U.S. Department of Education. We'll be able to help you identify your best repayment plan, accounting for your unique life goals, right? We'll help you implement your student loan strategy and help you shop private refinancing companies if your situation warrants it. And we'll create and evaluate numerous scenarios, like how will your student loans be affected by a potential wedding, significant increases in income, or just evaluating a job opportunity out there. If forgiveness is likely, I'll go ahead and calculate your potential to benefit from it. I'll show you ways to maximize it and even get started saving for any kind of looming tax bills that's going to be out there. Now, let me tell you how you can get me to take a look at your student loans for free. So here's my plug and what I'm looking to get out of this. I'm looking to grow my financial practice with like-minded, well-educated people just like yourselves, where my investment of time would make the most impact. I want a return on my investment working with my clients, and that's having being able to affect a lot more years in their life. That's why I work with young professionals. So I perform these student loan analysis for my clients at no extra charge, but we also do offer full service financial planning. Student loans is only one piece of the puzzle here, right? Look at all this other stuff here: organizing your personal finance, getting to know your net worth and tracking your income and expenses, planning for emergency needs, to investment planning, tax planning, education planning, insurance planning. You know, it's what I do. I'm a financial planner. And then once we develop your student loan strategy, me and my team will also create a financial plan for your money and help you understand that, um, help you understand really kind of what to do with your money. And the first thing that we'll do is we'll address your cash flow, which is the flow of money in and out of your household. We'll help optimize your cash flow and spending so that you can say yes to the things that you want to do in life and say no to the things that don't push you forward to your goals. We'll address your core cash accounts out there, help you build what I call your three money buckets required to build wealth, which is your emergency fund, your vacation fund, your 5-year goal fund. We'll assess your risk and workplace benefits, such as your insurance policies. We'll make sure that you have enough, but not too much, and that you only keep it for as long as you need it. We'll also review your workplace benefits and help you identify holes in your plan. Remember, I said a good financial plan has both offensive and defensive strategy. The last thing that you're going to want to do is build a little bit of wealth for yourself, only for it to evaporate from a mistake. And I've seen that happen from people. And then once 1 and 2 are done, we'll go ahead and create an investment plan for you. And while the markets will always have volatility, guys, the key to being a successful investor is by minimizing your losses in the bad years without foregoing the substantial growth in the good years, which is uniquely where we are positioned right now. Um, we'll also make sure that you're well diversified, not just across asset classes and countries, but also tax efficiency. And that leads us into tax planning. For most of us out there, we're going to spend most of our money in taxes throughout our lifetime. So we want to be smart about where we're spending our taxes. No one's going to tell you that you're overpaying in taxes. So I'm hoping that you to be able to prepare taxes for my clients next year. Retirement, probably far away for you guys. Maybe you don't care, but we're going to be making some good strides to diversify your retirement income. What we don't want to have happen is that when you go to retire, that the market starts reacting the way it's been doing lately, jumping up and down all over the place. So we'll go ahead and set some money on the sidelines so that you can let your investments bounce back. With your estate plan, we'll make sure that you have adequate wills and trusts set up, and if they're needed. And then we'll make sure that you have proper life insurance outside of work so that you can make sure that your family doesn't suffer. And this is what we call a perfect model. And in that model, we'll not only strive to organize your financial life, but we'll also help create efficiencies for your money. Now, while everyone's circumstances are different, I think our objective is really to kind of provide you with the strategies that give you the greatest opportunity for wealth, happiness, and success over your lifetime. So if that's you, please feel free, reach out to me, message me in the chat below, leave some comments. I'll hang around for a little bit here for some kind of questions, but I want to thank you for making it to the end of this presentation. Thank you.